The number one question I get asked is how much creative testing volume do I need to be doing in my Meta account to hit specific spend thresholds? So I've created this calculator which allows you to input allocation to testing, your current blended CAC, with a statistical relevancy factor that then outputs how much creative testing volume you should be doing per month and per week. So let's run through an example of this calculation. You can build this yourself. It's very simple inputs, outputs, and formulas that allows you to conceptualize exactly how much creative you should be testing. And shocker, it's a lot more than you initially think. So now let's say that you're an early stage startup. You're allocating 80% of your budget towards testing because you don't really know what's even working yet. You might only have one creative that actually is working decently well, and so that's your 20% allocation towards scaling. You have a blended CAC of $50, and generally speaking, you want a statistical relevancy factor of 10. Now, what this means is, what level of spend through that creative are we going to deem as statistically relevant to be able to decide whether that creative worked or not? And now, generally, at lower blended CACs, you can afford to have higher statistical relevancy because you can get a lot more conversion volume out of $500 in spend. Comparatively, if you have a $300 CAC, generally, as a startup, you don't have $3,000 to invest to understand if each individual creative works with statistical relevancy. And so you have to lower this factor a little bit and play a bit more of a risky game. So I'm going to put this back up to 10 and we'll put blended CAC down to 50. Now you have your starting spend and then increments, which just outputs the graph on the right. And now you can see that at these different levels of spend, you can see what your testing spend allocation is, and then how many creatives you need to be testing per month. You can see that the number is enormous. It's a lot higher than you would have initially expected. And the reason for this is that when you have $8,000 going to testing and you deem a creative test as $500 in spend, you have the ability to go and test 16 new creatives. Now, does that mean you should necessarily be testing 16 new creatives at this volume? Not necessarily, because what will likely happen is a few of these creatives will hopefully work and you'll have some hits. And therefore your allocation to testing will actually drop off quite rapidly. You'll start off with majority of your budget in testing, and this is what all new ad accounts should look like. If you're looking to launch out of the gates and start spending $12,000 on Facebook tomorrow, you should be launching out of the gates with 24 brand new creative ready to go for month one. Absolutely, no questions asked. Then as you move into month two, this will likely decrease down to 40%, and you'll need half the creative volume to maintain the same level of spend. And then it will drop to 30%, and you'll need even less creative volume for the same level of spend. However, you're likely going to want to scale. And so as your allocation to testing decreases, your meta ad spend is likely going to increase as well. And so you're going to stepstone up to 30, 35K a month, and creative volume will be about the same as what it was at the start. So even though creative volume will come down a little bit, depending on how quickly you want to scale will depend on how much more creative volume you need to be putting into the account. And so for those that are currently watching this and they're spending $50,000 a month, and they probably have about a 20% allocation towards testing, you really want to be putting 20 new creatives into the account per month. And I want to stress that yes, you could count a new creative as a slight color variation, etc. But I would really push to have different ideas. A single still image with a few variations in headline and background color image, in my opinion, is not a big needle mover in driving further incremental performance within an account. You could argue there's incrementality there, but it might be 1%. And is that 1% really what we're looking for? Typically not. We want order of magnitude improvements, which is going to allow us to unlock the ability to continue to scale at the blended CAC that we currently have. And so I would be looking at generating ideas in high volume, and that's really where, as a D2C brand, you're going to be able to stand out within your industry and hit really high ad spend thresholds really quickly, is through the generation of ideas, through the generation of creative and having high creative velocity within the account as a whole.